Skin Deep, written and narrated by Saffron Bryant. Chapter 5. "How's that leg holding up?" Doc asked, glancing over his shoulder at Ravyn. She bit her lip and nodded as her skin pulled against the stitches. "I'll be okay, but I can't lie in bed another second." 2 days of listening to the robots bicker had her almost ready to turn herself into the royal escort. Doc chuckled. "I'm afraid there's not much excitement here. At least not for a human. But I'll give you a tour anyway. We could take you back to the capital. That'll put some excitement in your life," Grumpy growled from the next room. Doc rolled his eyes at Ravyn and waved her forward. "As usual, ignore him. Make sure you watch out for the puddles." He stepped over a black patch of oil blocking the doorway. "Usually Bashful would have cleaned that up, but I'm afraid he's still a bit nervous around you." Ravyn raised an eyebrow and stepped over the puddle. "Couldn't you fix Leaky? Then there wouldn't be puddles everywhere." Doc snorted, and a moment later Leaky zipped into the room, leaving a new trail in his wake. "Can't be done," Leaky said. "They've tried everything. It's just a magical part of who I am." He spun in a tight circle on his small wheels and splayed his arms as if performing for a large crowd, sending splatters of oil up the nearby wall. Doc shrugged. "Like he said, we've tried. Now, here we have the sitting room." He waved his hand around the room as he spoke. A thick armchair curved under Grumpy's weight as the large robot inspected the inside workings of his arm. He didn't look up as they entered. "What's he doing?" Ravyn whispered to Doc. Leaky burst between them and spun in a circle. "Checking his weapons. He never stops. I think he's obsessed." Grumpy ignored them. "Oh." Ravyn watched out of the corner of her eye as a long barrel rose up out of Grumpy's forearm. "Happy's power source is in here," Doc said, tapping on a humming metal box set into the wall. Ravyn nodded. The box gave off a low wave of heat that warmed the small room and gave it a cozy feel. A spiral staircase wound both above and below them at the far side of the room. It seemed to lean to one side, the ironwork not quite sitting straight. "This is Dopey," Leaky said, zooming to the other corner where an ancient-looking computer sat gathering dust. "Dopey, mopey, no hopey," the computer's speakers buzzed. Ravyn's mouth dropped and she took a step forward. "That must be over 100 years old." Doc nodded, looking down at the computer like a fond uncle. "At least." "Bloody piece of junk that's not good for anything," Grumpy said. Ravyn barely heard him. She reached out a trembling hand toward the monitor. Green text scrolled continuously across the screen. She lightly brushed the top, her fingers coming away with a thin layer of dust. "Where'd you find it?" she said, stepping around the table to see it from the back. Doc shrugged. "I couldn't let him just get thrown in the dump and demolished." "Doc says just because he's old, that doesn't mean he should be killed," Leaky said, rolling back and forth in a trail of oil. "He's got a heart as soft as a human. Fills this place with old and useless crap," Grumpy said, still not looking up from his arm. "He's beautiful," Ravyn said. Doc smiled. "Wait till you see what I've got in the basement." He took 3 long strides and started down the stairs. Ravyn limped after him. "I'll just wait here," Leaky called, his wheels teetering on the edge of the stairs. The staircase wound around itself twice before spilling out into a dim basement. A flickering overhead light illuminated the piles of equipment stacked against the walls. Contraptions with gears and coiled springs piled atop computer chips and hard drives. "This is amazing," Ravyn said. "Yes, but this is where the real miracle lies." Doc stood in the middle of the room where a thick sheet covered what looked like a long, thin table. He gripped the sheet and ripped it off with a flourish. Beneath lay what looked like a metal coffin with pipes and wires. Ravyn frowned and stepped closer. "What is it?" "This is a cryo-sleep medical pod," Doc said with a smile. "I call it Sleepy." As Ravyn leant forward for a better look, the overhead light flickered and went out, plunging the basement into darkness. "Darn power," Doc growled. a dim light flickering on above his eyes. Happy, what's going on? Just the power cell, my old friend. Not to worry, I'll have it back in a jiffy. Why don't we all enjoy some calming meditation while we wait? Why don't I fry your circuits? Grumpy's voice floated down the stairs from the sitting room. That would be most unfortunate, Happy said. Power will be restored in 2 minutes. Doc sighed. As soon as I see a new power cell for sale, I'm going to jump on it, even if I have to sell Leaky to get it. I heard that, Leaky squeaked down the stairs. Doc chuckled. Just joking, but this is getting ridiculous. 2 minutes later, the overhead light burst into life, stinging Ravyn's eyes. She blinked and returned her attention to the cryopod. A thick glass lid covered the top, revealing a smooth metal box within. Ravyn laid her hand on the cool surface. Her reflection gazed up at her from the glass. They were common in the last border war. The cryo-freeze slows down a person's metabolism, giving their body time to heal with the help of machines, of course. Incredible. Yes, I had to work a triple shift to make enough money to pay for it, but it was worth it. Triple shift? Ravyn glanced up at him. What do you do? Doc's smile faltered. Oh, the same as all the robots out here. Which is? He sighed and headed back for the stairs. We mine and process Calanto for the Queen. Ravyn stopped, her eyebrows springing up. That's just a conspiracy theory. Doc gave a chuckle as he started up the stairs. I wish that's all it was. So she really does use something to keep her young? Doc nodded. Her father was a scientist and discovered it. He was a good man. Ravyn raced up the stairs to catch him. You knew Queen Elena's father? I've known many people, but yes, Rick was a good man. He wanted to use the Calanto to cure disease. Unfortunately, his wife and daughter had other plans. Ravyn shook her head as they got back to the sitting room. Amazing. I knew there was something more going on. Doc stepped over a puddle left at the top of the stairs. Enough about her. I still have to show you the observatory. He turned and began up the next spiral of the stairs, heading into the ceiling. Ravyn followed, her mind racing with everything she'd heard. The Queen relied on a secret drug to keep her young. The city would explode with that kind of knowledge. The observatory turned out to be a small attic filled with telescopes that pointed out of its many windows. More contraptions lined the walls, the purposes of which Ravyn could only guess at. Doc grinned as he pointed out landmarks in the desert, from the mine where he and Grumpy collected Calanto to a faint glimmer on the horizon that marked the next town. It's not much, but it's home, he said as they re-entered the kitchen. I think it's wonderful, Ravyn said with a smile. Just like this day we're having, Happy's voice boomed through the room. The sun is shining and the birds are singing. Or at least I'm sure they would be if we lived somewhere other than this beautiful desert. Ravyn chuckled. She could get used to living here. End chapter. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you'll know when the next chapter is released.